Hello. Today I'm going to talk about knock sensor problems on Chevy and GM pickup trucks dating from the early 2000s, the 2000s through the 2007s. All the V8 engines have two knock sensors that are mounted, unfortunately, underneath the intake manifold. And this is a bitch to get off. For you to do it, it's hard. There's lots of vacuum tube connections and electrical connections that you have to undo before you take it off. And then after you take it off, you've got to clean off the gaskets from all the intakes, put new gaskets on. It's just a treacherous job. It's hard. If you ask the dealer to do it, you're talking hundreds, even $1,000 maybe. So when there's a problem with these knock sensors, you got a problem. So what brings this about? What you're going to here's another issue with these knock sensors is they're not expensive parts. They're $50 to $100 parts. The wiring harness is another $25. Each of these pickup trucks has two knock sensors. They call them bank 1 and bank 2. I guess that's because the motor's so big that one knock sensor can't hear all of the knocks. Knocking, for example, is what these knock sensors are meant to do is they are little microphones that are tuned to the sound frequencies that pre-ignition causes when it happens inside of a cylinder. And these microphones are connected back to the computer in the car, to the ECM, electronic control module. And if the electronic control module hears these knock frequencies, it retards or advances the ignition to try to prevent the knocking, because knocking can damage your engine. So, unfortunately, they're not an expensive part, but getting at them is very expensive. Let's take a look at what you're going to see on your code reader when there starts to be a problem with these knock sensors. This is one of the codes that you are likely to see. As you can see, it's a p0332 knock sensor 2 low circuit low bank 2. Okay, so that is the computer telling you that it doesn't like the way knock sensor number 2 is behaving. Meaning when the motor starts up and the computer starts up, the ECM starts up, it interrogates all the sensors, including the knock sensors, and if it doesn't like the way those knock sensors respond, it throws a code, basically, because it's telling you that there's something wrong with that sensor. This code is not telling you that the engine is knocking. It's just telling you that the ECM doesn't like that knock sensor. Unfortunately, in many states, that code is going to make you fail your inspection. So you got to deal with it. Here's the good news. There's a way, when you get a bad knock sensor, to bypass the bad knock sensor and make the ECM think that the good knock sensor is the second knock sensor. Now I'm going to show you kind of a simple circuit diagram for how these knock sensors look. So in this diagram, up here we've got the ECM, the engine control module. There's multiple wires coming out of it, but two of the wires are a blue and a green in a single wire harness that go to a connector, and this is just towards the back of the engine on top. It's easy to get to, fortunately. So this is the male connector, that's the female connector. The wire harness comes out of there, out of the female connector, and goes to the two knock sensors down here. In this diagram, this is the engine. There's knock sensor for bank 1, knock sensor for bank 2, and of course the engine is grounded to the battery negative. Let's see that. All right, so when everything's working well, each knock sensor is wired back to the ECM on its own circuit. It's a single wire circuit that connects like this. And the circuit is completed by these threaded, on the knock sensor has a threaded bolt at the bottom of it, which is screwed into the engine block, or the head, the engine head. and thereby connect it to ground. What frequently happens with these GM V8s is that water gets in under the intake manifold through condensation or splashing or when you wash your engine. And these NOx sensors are screwed in down in a little well, which is the low point. And therefore, when water gets in under the manifold, intake manifold, it's going to pool up around these threaded bolts at the bottom of the NOx sensors, and eventually it'll rust, and it'll eventually impede the ground. So eventually the thing won't be grounded, and once it's not grounded, it doesn't work right, and the computer detects that. The ECM detects it and throws a code. It's such a known problem that GM actually has a technical service bulletin that talks about pulling these things out, replacing them, and building up a silicon dam around the little wells and all this mumbo jumbo. It's a big pain in the neck to do it, and it all involves taking the manifold cover, the intake manifold off. So you get a code for 332, and what do? Well, the first thing you do is you can get at this connector here, take it apart, and put your ohm meter onto each of these circuits. First the blue wire that's going to this bank, and so connect your ohm meter between this lead in here and ground, and check the ohms. It should be about 100,000. Or the resistance should be about 100,000 ohms if it's a good NOx sensor and it's correctly grounded. Now in my case, the blue wire showed 100,000 ohms. That's bank 1. And bank 2, when I checked the resistance between here and ground, I saw about a varying resistance of anywhere from 200 to 800 ohms. So way, way less than this. So that clearly was the problem. The correct resistance is about 100,000 ohms. So there was a problem on this circuit because the resistance was wrong, and the code actually said bank 2. So I knew that's where my problem was. So what I did is I cut this wire here, like that, and I rerouted it over to here, like that. So, make sure that's clear. So this is broken. And so now, from the ECM's point of view, the computer, when it interrogates bank 1 via the blue wire, it's going to come down this channel here. It's going to look here. It's going to see the resistance, and it's going to see the voltage. And since all this is functioning correctly and it's grounded correctly, it's going to get a resounding yes, everything's fine. Then when it interrogates bank 2, which uses the green wire, it's going to go down here, cut over there, go down here, the same path as it did when it checked bank 1, and it's going to get the same response from this same NOx sensor. But the computer is going to think that it's talking to the bank 2 sensor, not the bank 1 sensor. But that's okay. We just want the ECM to be happy here. So that simple fix, all you have to do is cut this, disconnect this, cut this wire, splice it into here. What I did is I actually cut the blue wire and stripped both ends. I cut the green wire and stripped the end of it, and then I wound them all together. Used my soldering iron to put some solder on it to make sure they were sealed permanently forever. And then I put a wire nut over the top, and I slurped a bunch of liquid electrical tape over the whole, or up under the wire nut and over all the connections, so it would be protected from the weather. So essentially what we've done is we've fooled the ECM into thinking that NOx sensor 1 is, the NOx sensor for bank 1 is actually the NOx sensor for bank 1 and for bank 2, and the computer doesn't know the difference. After you do this, you need to drive the car for about 15 minutes to confirm that you don't get that code coming back. So clear your code and then drive the car for 15 minutes, preferably on the highway, and you will see that the code doesn't come back. Now I'm going to show you on the actual car where this connector is and how easy it is to get to. So the car is out here, and I'm going to lift the hood. And you will see right back there is the work that I did. So here, that's the female connector. You see the green wire and the blue wire. So there's the wire nut that I used to connect everything after I cut them. So inside this wire nut, this green wire and this blue wire are connected together with the blue wire out of this little harness here. That goes up into the wire nut as well. So that blue wire, which goes to the working knock sensor, bank 1, goes up into the wire nut and is connected to both of these leads, which go back through this connector to the ECM. Simple. So the only thing you have to do this work is to remove this. There's one nut here, take that off, and you have easy access to all of those wire harnesses there. And as I said, unfortunately, this whole intake manifold underneath that whole thing is where this wire goes to, and that's where the knock sensors are, way down underneath there. And as you can see, there's all kinds of stuff that has to be disconnected in order to take that intake manifold off. So this is an easy fix. Turns off your check engine light and doesn't cost you hardly any money. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave comments and questions and I will try to answer them. Have a good day.